I think what we're trying to say is that this film, you know, is picking up right where the first film left off, you know, just 20 years later, and that you know, we're trying to get back to the roots of, you know, what made that film scary. And part of what it was is I feel like you know, it has this mystery to it. It doesn't explain things, you know, like but in a good way. Like some movies, you know, it doesn't explain things, and you don't feel like you got all the answers just because, you know, it's just not clear storytelling or something. Like in the case of the Blair Witch, like that's the whole strength of it, is that you kind of, I mean, like you kind of spend the whole movie not knowing exactly what happened at all. Like, I mean, and it gives you very little, it gives you a lot of clues, but they're all very subtle clues. It picks up basically 20 years later after the events of the first movie, and Heather, you know, her brother is older now. He was really young whenever the events of the first film happened in '94, and now he's like kind of an adult who's been obsessing over this, you know, case over all these years, and he may or may not have some evidence that she's actually been alive all this time in the woods. And so he gets a group of his friends together, one of which is, you know, doing her documentary thesis project, and decides to make it about him and his search for his sister. And they're off into the woods, and you know, it's you know, a POV found footage you know, experience, just in the same way that the first film is. Our approach to the horror in the film was trying to begin with a certain type of horror and then take you through a full spectrum and range of kind of terrifying little vignettes. And the way we did that is that the first half of the film is structured much more like a documentary. There's a lot more cameras. Lisa's still thinking she's making a documentary project. And so it's less about the POV earpiece cameras that the characters are wearing. We use more of, like, you know, she's using a DSLR with a zoom lens, and, you know, and Lane has his little DV camera, and, you know, so we're kind of relying on these kind of more documentary type of feels to it. Even the editing is a little bit more like that. And then the first scares are just the very, you know, perceived sounds and creepy stuff like that. For us, it was just really cool because, you know, like I know when the first film came out, I went online and, you know, did all the research and read about Rustin Parr and, you know, all the original backstory and stuff like that, all the mythology backstory. And, you know, so I still actually retained a lot of that information. I remember even in our first discussion with Lionsgate, to me it was like, you know, we have to get more of that stuff in this movie. So, you know, we wanted our characters to really kind of, you know, in the least amount of exposition as possible, you know, really be able to bring audience up to speed of what these legends were. And, you know, fans of the original will appreciate it because, you know, we're really just kind of spelling out stuff that was really only hinted at the first film and was much more, you know, prominent on the online stuff and the dossier and all that stuff that was released. And, you know, so we tried to take all those little things that you heard about in the first movie and expand on them, and then even try to, you know, kind of play off of them in the movie. You know, so everything we did was based on sort of like the lore that was created by the first film, and it's such a rich mythology that they created. It's insane, you know, like it's such a well-rounded kind of scope of things.
Blair Witch al cinema.